December 1221. In the frozen mountain passes of the Caucasus, somewhere between heaven and hell, 20,000 Mongol horsemen are trying not to die. They've been tricked by their guides into taking a route that no army should ever attempt. The granite walls rise thousands of feet on either side. Ice coats everything. Horses slip and fall into chasms so deep their screams fade before they hit bottom. Men freeze solid in their saddles. The siege engines they dragged all the way from Persia have to be abandoned because the paths are too narrow. For every mile they advance, they leave behind frozen corpses and the bones of horses that couldn't take another step. These are the supposed masters of warfare, the unstoppable Mongol horde, and they're being defeated by geography and winter. The local tribesmen watch from the heights, occasionally rolling boulders down onto the struggling column. The Mongols can't fight back. They can barely move. This is supposed to be a scouting mission, a quick raid through unfamiliar territory. Instead, it's becoming a nightmare that will haunt military planners for centuries. How do you move 20,000 cavalry through terrain where three men can't walk side by side? How do you feed horses when there's nothing but rock and ice? How do you maintain morale when your men are dying, not in glorious combat, but from simple exposure? But here's the thing about the Mongols: they don't break, they don't surrender, they don't turn back. And when they finally emerge from those death trap mountains onto the steppes of southern Russia, they're going to be very, very angry. And the princes of Kiev and Rus, sitting comfortable in their wooden palaces, drinking their mead, arguing over territory and tribute, have absolutely no idea what's about to hit them. This is the story of the Great Raid, the 3-year, 8,000-kilometer journey of death and discovery that took two of history's greatest generals from the deserts of Persia to the forests of Russia. It's the story of how 20,000 men defeated armies 5 times their size, how they turned diplomatic treachery into an art form, and how they gave Genghis Khan the intelligence he needed to eventually conquer half of Europe. By the end of this video, you'll understand how this raid wasn't just a military operation. It was the greatest reconnaissance mission in medieval history, a preview of coming attractions that nobody in Europe was prepared for. Let's back up and understand how this whole thing started. It's 1220, and Genghis Khan has just finished absolutely destroying the Khwarezmian Empire. We're talking about one of the largest, wealthiest empires in the world, reduced to smoking ruins in less than 2 years. The cities of Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench have been sacked. Hundreds of thousands, possibly millions, are dead. The scale of destruction is so complete that some regions won't recover for centuries. But there's a problem. The man responsible for starting this war, Shah Muhammad II of Khwarezm, is still alive. He's running like his life depends on it, which it absolutely does. This isn't just about revenge, though Genghis Khan definitely wants that. It's about making an example. The Shah had killed Mongol merchants and ambassadors back in 1218, which in Mongol culture is signing your own death warrant. Not just your death warrant, but the death warrant of your entire civilization. The Mongols take the sanctity of merchants and envoys seriously. Kill a Mongol ambassador, and the Khan will cross continents to make you pay. So Genghis Khan calls in two of his most capable generals, Subutai and Jebe. These aren't just any commanders. These are the special forces of the medieval world, the kind of generals who can operate independently for years at a time, thousands of miles from support, and still accomplish their mission. Subutai is the son of a blacksmith, a commoner who rose through pure merit to become one of the 4 so-called dogs of war that Genghis Khan relies on most. He joined the army at 14 years old, following his older brother Jelm, and within a decade, he was commanding one of the 4 vanguard divisions of the entire Mongol army. Think about that. In most medieval societies, a blacksmith's son would never even get to hold a sword, let alone command armies. But the Mongols are pure meritocracy. You prove yourself in battle, you rise. You fail, you die. Subutai is a master of logistics, of moving armies across impossible distances, of coordinating attacks across hundreds of miles. He's also absolutely ruthless, not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but ruthless in the sense that nothing will stand between him and his objective. If a city surrenders, he might spare it. If it resists, he'll kill every living thing inside. The Mongols believe in giving people one chance. Take it or die. And then there's Jebe, whose name means the arrow. He got that name from Genghis Khan himself after an incident that tells you everything you need to know about Mongol culture. Jebe started out as an enemy warrior. During a battle in 1201 or 1202, he shot an arrow that hit Genghis Khan's horse. Some sources say the arrow wounded Genghis Khan himself in the neck, though he concealed the injury by asking who shot his horse. This could have been a death sentence. Instead, when Jebe was captured, Genghis asked who shot his horse. Jebe, then known as Jurko-Adai, stepped forward, fully expecting to die, and said he did it. If Genghis was going to kill him, so be it. But if he let him live, he'd serve loyally forever. Genghis Khan, impressed by this honesty and courage, not only spared him but made him a general, and Jebe lived up to his promise. He became one of the most feared commanders in the Mongol army, known for his daring, his willingness to take risks, and his ability to turn desperate situations into victories. Where Subutai is calculating and methodical, Jebe is bold and instinctive. Together, they're unstoppable. Genghis gives them 20,000 men. This is no small force. In Mongol terms, that's two tumen, two of the 10,000-man units that are the basic building blocks of their army. Each man is a trained horse archer, capable of firing accurately while riding at full gallop. Each man travels with multiple horses, sometimes as many as 5, so they can switch mounts and maintain incredible speed over long distances. They can cover 100 kilometers in a day when they need to, which is twice what most medieval armies can manage. But more importantly, Genghis gives them permission to continue west after they catch the Shah, permission to scout, permission to raid, permission to see what's out there beyond the frontiers of the known world. He tells them they can stay out for 3 years. 3 years to hunt one man and explore an entire region. Most military operations are measured in weeks or months. Genghis is thinking in years, in continents, in campaigns that won't be fought until a decade later. This is strategic thinking on a level that Europe won't match until the age of exploration. Genghis isn't just conquering territory. He's gathering intelligence. He's mapping routes. He's identifying weaknesses. He's testing defenses. When the real invasion comes in the 1230s and 1240s, the Mongols won't be stumbling into the unknown. They'll know exactly where to strike, exactly how to divide their enemies, exactly which mountain passes are vulnerable and which rivers are fordable. All thanks to this raid. The target is simple: find Shah Muhammad and make sure he can never rebuild his empire. The mission is broader: see how far west you can go, see what you can learn, and come back alive. The Shah is running scared, and he has every reason to be. His empire has collapsed. His armies have been scattered. His cities are burning. His own mother has been captured. Everywhere he turns, there are Mongol cavalry patrols hunting for him. He flees west from Samarkand with a handful of loyal guards, desperately trying to stay ahead of the pursuit. Jebe and Subutai don't waste time. They leave the main Mongol army and head west with their 20,000 cavalry. This is late 1220, early 1221. Winter is coming, which would stop most armies cold. Not the Mongols. They're from Mongolia, where winter means 40 below zero and snow drifts taller than a man. Persian winter is practically mild by comparison. They cut across northern Iran like a scalpel through flesh. Hamadan, one of the largest cities in Persia, ancient and wealthy. The Mongols arrive, and the city resists. The Mongols take the city, kill those who fought back, loot everything valuable, and burn the rest. Then they move on. They don't garrison. They don't occupy. They just destroy and leave. This becomes their pattern throughout the raid. The Shah keeps running. He reaches the Caspian Sea and takes refuge on an island. And there, in December 1220, he dies. Most historians say pneumonia, brought on by exposure and exhaustion. His son Jalal al-Din is left to continue the resistance, which he will do for years, becoming a legendary thorn in the Mongols' side. But Jebe and Subutai have completed the first part of their mission. The Shah is dead, his empire is destroyed, and now they're free to explore. They swing north into Azerbaijan. The region is wealthy, filled with trading cities connecting Persia to the Caucasus and the Black Sea. The city of Tabriz, one of the great cities of the region, sees the Mongol army approaching and makes a smart decision. They offer a huge bribe: gold, silk, horses, supplies, anything the Mongols want if they'll just go away. The Mongols, pragmatic as always, take the bribe and leave. No siege necessary, no casualties, just a straightforward transaction. This is something people often miss about the Mongols. They're not mindlessly destructive. They're extremely rational. Resist and we kill you. Surrender and you might survive. Pay us off and we'll definitely leave. Every interaction is a calculation. Tabriz calculated correctly and survived. Many others didn't. As they move through Azerbaijan and Armenia, the Mongols are adapting to new terrain. This isn't the open steppe they're used to. There are mountains, forests, rivers that flood unpredictably. But they're learning. They're taking notes. They're capturing locals who can tell them about the geography, the politics, the trade routes. They're building a mental map of the entire region. And they're picking up reinforcements. Kurdish and Turkmen tribal groups, seeing which way the wind is blowing, offer their services to the Mongols. These are steppe nomads like the Mongols, comfortable with mobile warfare, useful as guides and scouts. The Mongol force grows somewhat, helping offset losses and provide local expertise. By early 1221, they're ready for the next phase. Permission has arrived from Genghis Khan. Continue the reconnaissance. And directly in their path lies the Kingdom of Georgia, one of the most powerful Christian kingdoms in the world, with an army that's been preparing to join the Fifth Crusade in the Holy Land. The Kingdom of Georgia in 1220 is at its height of power. Under Queen Tamar, who ruled until 1213, Georgia had dominated the entire Caucasus region. Their influence extended into modern-day Azerbaijan, Armenia, and eastern Turkey. They had a sophisticated feudal system, a strong economy based on trade routes between Europe and Asia, and a powerful military built around heavily armored cavalry and large infantry levies. But Tamar is dead, and her son George IV, known as George Lasha, is king. By all accounts, George is brave, personally courageous, willing to lead from the front. But bravery isn't the same as competence, and what George needs right now is not courage but wisdom. The Mongol advance guard reaches Georgia in the fall of 1220. They're scouting, raiding villages, testing defenses. The Georgians watch these strange horsemen emerging from the mountains and make assumptions. These must be some new tribe of nomads from the east. Troublesome, yes, but nothing the Georgian army can't handle. Very dangerous, as it turns out. The Mongols aren't raiding randomly. They're goading the Georgians into battle. Subutai and Jebe scatter their auxiliary forces into smaller raiding parties and send them across the countryside. Villages burn. Livestock is stolen. Refugees flood into the cities with stories of the unstoppable horsemen who attack at dawn and vanish by noon. George IV assembles his army. Sources vary on the numbers, but we're looking at somewhere between 10,000 and 30,000 men. Heavy cavalry in full armor, mounted on armored horses, infantry with spears and shields, Armenian allies with their own cavalry units. It's an impressive force by any medieval standard. The battle happens at the Kotman River near the town of Kunan in late 1220. The Mongols do what they always do so. They scatter into a loose formation, using their composite bows to pepper the Georgian cavalry with arrows. The Georgians, in their heavy armor, can't catch the lighter Mongol cavalry. Every time the Georgians charge, the Mongols retreat, just out of reach, shooting backwards as they go, turning the battlefield into a killing ground. The Georgian horses, despite their armor, start to fall. Arrows find weak points, hit legs, strike faces. The Georgian charge loses momentum, and that's when the Mongols' real trap springs. Auxiliary forces that had been hidden in the surrounding terrain hit the Georgians from the flanks and rear. What started as a controlled battle turns into chaos. King George fights bravely. He's in the thick of the fighting, trying to rally his men, and then an arrow hits him in the chest. The wound is severe. His bodyguards have to drag him from the field. The Georgian army, seeing their king wounded, begins to waver. The Mongols sense weakness and press their attack. The Georgian formation breaks. What was an organized retreat turns into a rout. Thousands of Georgian and Armenian soldiers die in the pursuit. The survivors flee back to Tbilisi, carrying their wounded king. The Mongols don't pursue into the city. They're not here to conquer territory. They're here to test defenses and gather intelligence. And they've learned everything they need to know. Georgian heavy cavalry, despite their equipment and training, can be defeated by mobile horse archers using hit-and-run tactics. But the Mongols aren't done with Georgia yet. They withdraw south, back into northern Iran, where they spend late 1220 and much of 1221 raiding. They hit Hamadan again when the city refuses to pay more tribute. They sack several other cities. They're gathering strength, letting the Georgians think the threat has passed. In late 1221, they come back. This time they're reinforced. Their numbers swelled to around 30,000 with allied Turkmen cavalry. And this time, they're here to break Georgia completely. The Georgian army assembles again near Tbilisi. King George, still recovering from his wound, but determined to defend his kingdom, leads them himself. His military commander, Ivane Makargadzili, is a veteran general who understands they need to be careful this time. They can't charge recklessly into the Mongol arrows. But careful doesn't matter when you're facing Subutai and Jebe. The Mongol main force under Subutai advances openly. The Georgians see them coming and prepare. Meanwhile, Jebe has taken roughly 5,000 cavalry on a wide flanking maneuver, moving through rough terrain where the Georgians don't expect an attack. The battle at Bardov, near modern Barda in Azerbaijan, is a massacre. Subutai advances, and when the Georgian cavalry moves to engage, he retreats. It's the same trick as before, but the Georgians can't afford not to pursue. If they stay defensive, the Mongols will shoot them to pieces. So they advance carefully at first, trying to maintain formation. And then Jebe's force hits them from behind. The Georgians are caught between two Mongol armies. The heavy cavalry that was their pride is now their death trap. In heavy armor, they can't maneuver, can't retreat quickly. The Mongols surround them and methodically kill them. King George fights desperately and is wounded again, mortally this time. He'll die in 1223, his kingdom shattered. The Georgian army ceases to exist as a fighting force. The Mongols rampage through southern Georgia, looting everything they can carry, burning what they can't. But again, they don't occupy. They take their plunder and move north toward the Caucasus Mountains. And there's a consequence here that shows how far-reaching this raid's effects are. Georgia had been planning to send its army to support the Fifth Crusade in Egypt. a powerful Georgian force attacking from the north, while the European crusaders attacked from the west, could have changed the Crusades' outcome. But the Georgians can't send anyone now. Their army is destroyed. Their king is dying. The Crusaders wait for Georgian reinforcements that never arrive. The Mongol raid in 1221, taking place thousands of kilometers from Egypt, influences the fate of a crusade being fought in the Holy Land. It's now the end of 1221, and Jebe and Subutai are facing their biggest challenge yet. They need to cross the Caucasus Mountains. The Caucasus is one of the highest mountain systems in the world, with peaks reaching over 5,000 meters. There are exactly two practical passes through the mountains: the Darial Gorge in the west and the Derbent Pass in the east, right on the Caspian Sea coast. The Mongols approach Derbent first. It's a fortified city, ancient, with walls that have stood for centuries. The city controls the pass, the only easy route through the mountains on the eastern side. The Mongols send envoys. Surrender the city, give us guides through the pass, and we'll leave you alone. The people of Derbent refuse. They're Lezgins, mountain people, tough and independent. The gates stay closed. The Mongols could besiege the city, but that would take time. So they make another offer. They just want guides. Show us a route through the mountains, any route, and we'll pay you well and leave your city alone. The Lezgin elders discuss this. Eventually, 10 of them volunteer to guide the Mongols, but the guides have no intention of helping. They lead the Mongols into the most treacherous routes they know. Deep gorges where avalanches are common. Narrow passes where ice makes the footing deadly. Routes that barely qualify as paths, where horses have to be led single file and one misstep means plummeting hundreds of meters to your death. The Mongols realize they've been tricked, but by then they're committed. They can't go back. Medieval sources, Arab historians like Ibn al-Athir and Armenian chroniclers describe what happens next. Hundreds of men freeze to death. Horses slip on ice and fall into chasms. The cold is so intense that men's hands freeze to their reins. The siege engines they've been transporting have to be abandoned because there's no way to get them through the narrow passes. And the local tribes, watching from the heights, occasionally roll boulders down onto the struggling column or shoot arrows at men who can't fight back effectively. The Mongols are tough, but even they have limits. Morale plummets, but the Mongols don't break. Subutai and Jebe drive them forward. There's no choice anyway. Going back is as dangerous as going forward. So they keep moving, one painful step at a time, losing men and horses every day. The crossing takes weeks, possibly over a month. By the time they emerge on the northern side of the Caucasus, onto the steppes of what's now Chechnya and Dagestan, they're exhausted, diminished in numbers, and very angry. This is late winter or early spring of 1222. The Mongols rest, recover, and take stock. They've lost a significant portion of their force to the crossing, but they're still operational. They still have enough cavalry to be a threat. And now they're on familiar terrain again. The open steppe, where Mongol cavalry is most effective. And standing between them and open raiding into the rich lands to the north is the largest coalition army they've faced yet. The tribes of the northern Caucasus have been watching the Mongols approach, and they've done something smart. They've united Alans, Circassians, Lezgins from the northern tribes, and most importantly, the Kipchaks, a massive confederation of Turkic nomads who control the steppes from the Caucasus all the way to the Volga River. This coalition army numbers somewhere between 40,000 and 50,000 men. It's led by Kipchak Khans, experienced steppe warriors who understand mobile warfare. The Alans and Circassians add their own tribal levies, fierce mountain fighters. These are fellow nomads, people who fight the same way the Mongols do, with cavalry archers and rapid maneuvers. The Mongols are outnumbered at least 2 to 1. They're exhausted from the mountain crossing. They're low on supplies. But Subutai and Jebe are going to use their greatest weapon, diplomacy backed by complete ruthlessness. The armies meet somewhere in the northern Caucasus lowlands in the region around modern Grozny. The first battle is inconclusive. The coalition forces are numerous and motivated. They're defending their homeland. The Mongols use their usual tactics: mobile warfare, archery, feigned retreats. But the Kipchaks know these tricks. They're nomads too. They countermaneuver. The Alans and Circassians hold their ground. By the end of the day, both sides have taken heavy casualties, but neither has broken. The Mongols retreat in good order. The coalition celebrates, thinking they've driven off the invaders. But that night, Mongol envoys arrive under a flag of truce. They have a message for the Kipchaks. What are you doing fighting us? We're both Turkic peoples. We speak similar languages. We follow similar customs. Our quarrel isn't with you, it's with the Alans and Circassians. We just want to punish them, and then we'll leave. The message continues. You're risking your lives for people who aren't even your tribe. We have no desire to fight you. In fact, if you step aside and let us deal with the Alans and Circassians, we'll share the spoils with you. Help us, or at least stay neutral, and we'll pay you well. We're brothers of the steppe. Why should we fight each other? This is psychological warfare of the highest order. The Mongols are exploiting ethnic and tribal divisions in the coalition. The Kipchaks and the mountain peoples have always had an uneasy relationship. The promise of wealth without fighting is tempting. The appeal to common Turkic heritage is persuasive. The Kipchak Khans debate. Eventually, enough of them are persuaded. The Kipchaks withdraw from the coalition. Some actively join the Mongols. Most just agree to stay neutral and watch. The Alans and Circassians are now facing the Mongols alone. Their 50,000-man coalition has been cut in half. When the second battle happens, it's a completely different affair. The Mongols, reinforced by Kipchak defectors who know the terrain and the enemy tactics, attack with overwhelming force. The mountain peoples fight desperately, but they're outnumbered now, and the Mongols are in no mood for mercy. The Alans and Circassians are crushed. Thousands die in the battle and the pursuit that follows. The survivors flee into the mountains. Whole tribes are scattered. Villages are burned. And now the Mongols turn on the Kipchaks. The Kipchaks, scattered in their camps across the steppe, confident that they're safe because of their deal with the Mongols, are caught completely off guard. The Mongols attack suddenly, hitting multiple Kipchak camps simultaneously in coordinated raids. The Kipchaks who defected are used as guides to find the camps. The Kipchaks, realizing they've been played, try to organize resistance, but it's too late. They're scattered, disorganized, and the Mongols are hitting them before they can concentrate their forces. The slaughter is immense. Arab historians describe Mongol cavalry ranging across the steppes, killing any Kipchaks they find. Some Kipchak groups flee east toward the Volga. Others flee west toward the Dnieper River, toward the lands of the Rus principalities. And this flight west is going to have enormous consequences, because those fleeing Kipchaks are going to bring news of the Mongol threat directly to the doorstep of Europe. The Mongols have just pulled off one of the most successful examples of divide and conquer in military history. They faced a coalition of 50,000 warriors while outnumbered and exhausted. Instead of fighting desperately and losing, they split the coalition, destroyed each part separately, and emerged victorious with minimal losses. By the spring of 1222, the Mongols have defeated everyone in their path, from Persia to the Caucasus to the northern steppes. They've raided the Crimea, sacking trading posts there. And now, with the steppe before them and their enemies broken, they can focus on the next phase, exploring the lands of the Rus. But there's a problem. A Kipchak Khan named Kotian has escaped the slaughter with a substantial force. He's fled west into the territories of the Rus princes, and he's doing something very smart and very dangerous for the Mongols. He's warning everyone about the threat coming from the east. Khan Kotian is desperate. His people have been devastated. The Mongols have destroyed the Kipchak Confederation that dominated the steppes for generations. Towns have been burned, herds scattered, warriors killed by the thousands. The survivors are fleeing in every direction. Kotian heads west into the lands of the Kievan Rus to the court of his son-in-law, Mstislav Mstislavich, Prince of Galicia, known to history as Mstislav the Bold. The Kipchaks and the Rus have a complicated relationship, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies. They've fought each other and traded with each other for generations. But Kotian has a blood tie now. His daughter is married to Mstislav, and he's going to use that connection to save what's left of his people. It's early 1223. Kotian arrives in Galicia with tales of the Mongol terror. He describes cities burning, armies destroyed, people scattered. He brings gifts, horses from the steppe, camels from the east, buffaloes, female slaves, anything of value he can offer. The chronicles describe him showering all the Russian princes in gifts and making his plea. Today, the Tatars have taken our land, and tomorrow they will come and take yours. So help us. It's a smart argument. The Rus princes might not care much about the Kipchaks' problems, but they should care about their own survival. If the Mongols have destroyed everyone to the south and east, the Rus' territories are next. A council is called in Kiev. The major princes gather. This is already a problem because the Rus state is not really a unified state anymore. It's a collection of independent principalities that happen to share a common heritage and occasionally cooperate. Kiev is nominally the capital, and Mstislav Romanovich, also known as Mstislav III of Kiev, is nominally the senior prince. But in practice, each prince rules his own territory and makes his own decisions. The debate is heated. Some princes are skeptical. Who are these Tatars anyway? Some unknown tribe from the east. How dangerous can they really be? But Kotian is persuasive. And there's another factor. If the Rus princes don't help the Kipchaks, what happens then? The Kipchaks might be forced to ally with the Mongols, or the Mongols might absorb the surviving Kipchaks and use them as guides and scouts. Better to fight them now, with the Kipchaks as allies. Eventually, enough princes agree. They'll assemble an army and march south to meet this threat. The principalities that commit forces include Kiev under Mstislav III, Galicia and Volhynia under Mstislav the Bold, Chernigov, Smolensk, and Kursk. These are the core principalities of the southern Rus. Northern principalities like Novgorod and Vladimir Suzdal stay out of it. The army that assembles is enormous by medieval standards. Sources vary wildly, but most modern historians estimate somewhere between 30,000 and 80,000 men. It includes the personal retinues of the princes, professional warriors on horseback. It includes urban militias from the cities. And it includes the Kipchak cavalry under Kotian. But here's the critical weakness. There's no unified command. Each prince leads his own contingent. Mstislav the Bold is aggressive, eager for glory, confident in his abilities. Mstislav of Kiev is more cautious, more calculating. He's older, more experienced, and he's already wary of this expedition. Other princes have their own agendas, their own rivalries, their own ideas about tactics and strategy. This disunity is going to be fatal, but they don't know that yet. Right now, they're confident. They have a huge army. They're marching south into the steppe to crush some nomads. The army marches south in April 1223. As they move through the borderlands, Mongol envoys appear. The Mongols send ambassadors, around 10 of them, with a message. We have no quarrel with you. Our fight is with the Kipchaks, who have been raiding and causing problems. Turn the Kipchaks over to us, and we'll leave you alone. It's the same diplomatic strategy the Mongols used on the Kipchaks. Divide the alliance. Make it easy for your enemy to abandon their allies. But the Rus's princes make a catastrophic mistake. Instead of negotiating, instead of using the envoys to gather intelligence, they kill them. All 10 ambassadors are executed. The chronicles are clear about this. The princes consider it an insult that the Mongols would dare to make demands. In Mongol culture, this is the ultimate offense. Killing merchants is bad. Killing ambassadors is unforgivable. The Mongols have a code about this. Envoys are sacred. Killing them means you've declared total war. No mercy, no quarter, no negotiation. The Mongols send a second embassy. This time, the message is simple. Since you have listened to the Kipchaks and have killed all our envoys, and you are coming against us, come then. But we have not touched you. Let God judge all. It's an acknowledgement of the coming battle. The Mongols have offered peace twice. The Ruses have chosen war. The Mongol army retreats. They're withdrawing east, back toward the steppe, apparently fleeing before the massive Rus Kipchak force. The scouts report this back to the princes. The enemy is running. This is the chance to catch them and destroy them. Mstislav the Bold is excited. He's young, he's aggressive, and he can already see the glory of defeating these invaders. He urges immediate pursuit. Chase them down. Don't let them get away. Mstislav of Kiev is more cautious. Something feels wrong. Why would the Mongols retreat without giving battle? But caution is overruled by aggression. The army crosses the Dnieper River, using boats lashed together to create temporary bridges. This is a major operation, getting tens of thousands of men across a major river. It takes days. The Mongols wait patiently on the other side, close enough to observe but far enough to avoid combat. Once the Rus' army is across, the chase begins. The Mongols retreat steadily eastward. Not too fast. They want to be pursued, but not too slow either. They can't risk being caught by the faster Kipchak cavalry in the Rus' vanguard. The pursuit goes on for days. The chronicles describe it as 9 days of pursuit. What's clear is that the Mongol retreat is masterful. They leave behind just enough contact, just enough skirmishes to keep the Ruses engaged. Small Mongol units turn and fight, slow down the pursuit for a few hours, then break off and retreat. The Ruses' army is eating it up. They've won several small victories against these Mongol rearguards. The warriors are confident, excited. These Mongols aren't so tough. We're driving them before us. But something is happening that they don't fully realize. The army is stretching out. The faster Kipchak light cavalry is in front, eagerly chasing the Mongols. Then comes Mstislav the Bold with his Galician cavalry, also moving quickly. Behind them, at increasing distances, are the other princes with their forces, and far behind, Mstislav of Kiev with his 10,000 men, moving slowly and carefully. The army that started as a concentrated force is now strung out over dozens of kilometers. The vanguard can't even see the rearguard. Mstislav the Bold is operating independently, chasing the Mongols with his own forces and the Kipchaks. Mstislav of Kiev is a day's march behind. The Mongols are achieving exactly what they want. They're drawing the enemy deep into the steppe, away from supply lines, away from fortified cities. They're separating the Rus' forces into manageable pieces. And they're wearing them down. The Ruses have been marching hard for over a week, chasing an enemy they can see but never quite catch. The men are tired. The horses are tired. Discipline is getting sloppy. And then on May 30th, 1223, the retreating Mongols reach a river called the Kalka. It's a small river, nothing impressive. The Mongols cross the river and stop. They turn around and face their pursuers. The retreat is over. Mstislav the Bold and his vanguard, which includes Kotyan's Kipchaks and the fastest Rus's cavalry, reach the river and see the Mongol army waiting on the other side. This is the moment they've been pursuing for 9 days. The enemy has stopped running. What Mstislav doesn't know is that the Mongol force in front of him is just part of the Mongol army. Subutai has divided his forces. Some are visible in battle formation. Others are hidden, waiting in ambush positions. The river is a tactical barrier, but it's also a trap. Once the Russes cross, they'll be vulnerable. Mstislav the Bold makes his decision. He's not going to wait for the other princes to catch up. They might be a day or more behind. By the time they arrive, the Mongols might have slipped away again. No, he's going to attack now. He orders his forces to cross the river. The Kipchaks, eager to revenge themselves on the Mongols, cross first. The Galician cavalry follows. May 31st, 1223. The Battle of the Kalka River begins, and with it, Europe gets its first real taste of Mongol military doctrine. The Kipchak cavalry crosses the Kalka River first, splashing through the shallow water, eager to finally come to grips with the enemy. Behind them come the cavalry of Mstislav the Bold and Prince Daniel of Volhynia. Several thousand mounted warriors, armed with lances and swords, confident in their numbers. The Mongols on the far bank retreat, not panicked, just pulling back, drawing the Rus and Kipchaks forward, away from the river, away from the support of the rest of the army still crossing. The Kipchaks, remembering the betrayal, are furious. They charge hard. And then the Mongol retreat stops. Suddenly, the orderly withdrawal becomes a wheel around. And from both flanks, from positions the Kipchaks didn't see, more Mongol cavalry appears. The ambush is sprung. What happens next is what always happens when lighter cavalry faces Mongol horse archers without support. The Mongols don't charge into melee. They use their bows. From three sides, arrows pour into the Kipchak formation. And these aren't random shots. Mongol horse archers train their entire lives for this. Each man can loose 10 to 12 arrows per minute. Aimed shots that find the gaps in armor, the vulnerable horses, the exposed faces. The Kipchaks try to close the distance. But every time they charge, the Mongols retreat, shooting as they go. You can't catch them. You can't pin them down. And all the while, the arrows are falling. Horses stumble and fall, arrows through their legs or bellies. Riders topple from their saddles. The Kipchak charge loses momentum, breaks up into scattered groups. And that's when the Mongols, seeing the disorder, suddenly charge. Not with bows anymore, with lances and sabers. Heavy cavalry smashing into the disorganized Kipchaks. The Kipchaks break. They turn and flee back toward the river, back toward the Rus's forces. Mstislav the Bold and his Galician cavalry are crossing the river when the panicked Kipchaks come streaming back at them. There's confusion, chaos. The Kipchaks are running straight through the Galician formation, disrupting the careful order of the crossing. Mongol cavalry is right behind them, shooting into the mass of men and horses packed together at the river's edge. The Galicians and Volhynians try to form a battle line, try to cover the retreat and establish a defensive position. But they're caught in the worst possible situation. Half their force is across the river. Half is still crossing. The Kipchaks are running through their lines, and the Mongols are attacking from multiple directions. The chronicles describe what happens next in terms that emphasize the confusion. The Rus forces that have crossed the river are surrounded and destroyed. The Mongols use their classic combination, cavalry archers, to break up formations and inflict casualties. Then heavy cavalry charges to shatter whatever's left. The Rus warriors fight bravely. Individual acts of courage, desperate stands, small groups fighting back to back. But courage doesn't matter when you're outnumbered, surrounded, and your allies are fleeing. Prince Mstislav the Bold, who started this battle so confidently, barely escapes with his life. He and a small group of survivors fight their way back across the river. Thousands of his men don't make it. The Mongols pursue to the river's edge, shooting down men trying to cross back, pushing into the shallows to kill the wounded and dying. Prince Daniel of Volhynia is wounded in the fighting. He'll survive, but only because his men managed to get him away from the battlefield. The flower of Galician and Volhynian nobility dies in the mud beside the Kalka River. And during all this, Mstislav of Kiev is still kilometers away with his 10,000 men. By the time his scouts reach the battlefield and report back, the issue is decided. Mstislav of Kiev makes the smartest decision he can. He doesn't try to advance into the disaster. He retreats to a defensive position. There's a hill near the river, and the chronicles describe it as having some kind of fortified camp or stockade. Mstislav takes his forces there and prepares to defend. The Mongols, having destroyed the Rus vanguard, turn their attention to this new problem. They surround the hill. They start a siege. But they don't assault immediately. Why waste men storming a fortified position when you can just wait? The defenders have limited supplies. There's no reinforcement coming. The siege lasts 3 days. The chronicles describe it as a period of arrows and thirst. The Mongols keep up constant pressure, shooting at anyone who shows themselves, preventing any attempt to break out or find water. On the 3rd day, the Mongols send envoys under a flag of truce. The envoys are Kipchaks, who have joined the Mongol service. They bring an offer: surrender, and you'll be allowed to leave for a ransom. Prince Mstislav and his nobles can buy their freedom with gold. The regular soldiers can just go home. Mstislav agrees to the terms. His men lay down their weapons. They march out of the fortified camp, expecting to be escorted away to negotiate their ransom. The Mongols have absolutely no intention of honoring the agreement. As soon as the Rus forces are disarmed and out of their fortification, the slaughter begins. The common soldiers are killed outright. The nobles, including Prince Mstislav and at least 2 other princes, are taken prisoner. And now comes one of the most brutal executions in medieval history, an act designed to send a message across half a continent about the price of killing Mongol ambassadors. The Mongols have specific rules about executions. Spilling the blood of nobility is considered improper, based on their traditions. Kings and princes should die, but not by the sword or the arrow. So the Mongols have developed bloodless methods of execution: strangulation, suffocation, crushing. Prince Mstislav of Kiev and his fellow princes are bound. Some sources say they're wrapped in felt carpets or rugs. Others say they're just tied up. Then they're laid on the ground. The Mongols place wooden planks over them, heavy boards that distribute weight. And then the Mongol commanders and their officers sit down on those planks for a victory feast. You're bound, lying on the ground, and there are wooden boards pressing down on you. At first, it's uncomfortable. Pressure, but bearable. Then men start sitting on the boards above you. The pressure increases. More men, more weight. The boards press down on your chest, making it harder to breathe. Each breath is a struggle. The weight increases as the feast continues. Officers, generals, warriors celebrating their victory. Drinking fermented mare's milk. Eating meat. Toasting their success. And beneath them, slowly, over the course of hours, the Rus' princes are being crushed to death. The chronicles are explicit about this. The princes died beneath the wooden planks while the Mongols celebrated above them. It's not a quick death, but it's humiliating, and it's final, and it's designed to make a point. This is what happens when you kill Mongol ambassadors. The great prince of Kiev, one of the most powerful rulers in Eastern Europe, dies trapped beneath a wooden platform while his enemies feast above him. The exact death toll from the Battle of Kalka River is impossible to determine with certainty. Medieval chronicles don't do careful casualty counts, but the numbers they give are horrific. The Chronicle of Novgorod says that only 1 in 10 Rus's warriors returned home. If the army was 30,000 men, that's 27,000 casualties. If it was larger, the casualties were proportionally greater. What we know for certain is that the defeat was catastrophic. 6 princes died in the battle or were executed afterward. 12 princes in total from the campaign, counting those who were killed in the pursuit back to the Dnieper. 70 nobles, the boyars who formed the core of the Rus military aristocracy. Thousands of common soldiers. The southern Rus principalities are suddenly decapitated. Their military leadership is destroyed. Their armies are broken. The Mongols pursue the fleeing survivors back across the steppe, all the way to the Dnieper River. They raid the border regions, burning settlements, killing anyone they find. But they don't cross the Dnieper. They don't push into the Rus heartland. That's not what they're here for. They've made their point. They've tested the defenses. They've measured the strength and weakness of the Rus military. Now it's time to report back. The Mongols turn east, heading back across the steppe toward Mongolia. They've been gone for 2 years. They've traveled from Persia, through Azerbaijan, through Georgia, across the Caucasus, through the steppes of Russia. They've fought battles in 3 continents. They've defeated every army they faced, and now they're going home. But the journey isn't over yet. As they ride east, they encounter another enemy, the Volga Bulgars, a Turkic people who control the Middle Volga region. The Bulgars are not part of the Kipchak Confederation. They're a settled people with fortified cities, and they've been warned about the Mongols. The battle with the Volga Bulgars is one of the few clear defeats the Mongols suffered during the entire raid. The Arab historian Ibn al-Athir records it. The Mongols attack the Bulgar forces and are defeated with significant losses. He says only 4,000 Mongols survived the battle. Modern historians debate whether this account is accurate or exaggerated. It may refer to a smaller Mongol force rather than the main army. But whatever the truth, it's clear the Volga Bulgars gave the Mongols a much harder fight than anyone else on the raid. They used ambushes in forested terrain where the Mongol cavalry couldn't maneuver effectively. They avoided open battle where the Mongols excelled. The Mongols don't stick around to besiege Bulgar cities or continue the campaign. They've accomplished their primary mission. They've gathered intelligence, tested enemies, and proven that even the strongest armies in the region can be defeated by Mongol tactics. By late 1223 or early 1224, the Mongol force rejoins the main Mongol armies somewhere in Central Asia. They meet up with Joki's forces, Genghis Khan's eldest son, who's been campaigning in the western steppes. And here's where the historical record becomes unclear about Jebe. Jebe, one of the 2 commanders of the raid, effectively disappears from history at this point. He's mentioned with certainty until the Caucasus campaigns. After that, nothing. He's never mentioned again in reliable sources. He doesn't appear in any subsequent Mongol campaigns. He's not present at Genghis Khan's funeral. He's just gone. What happened to him? Nobody knows for certain. The Mongols didn't like to discuss the deaths of their commanders, considering it bad luck or taboo. But modern scholars have several theories based on fragmentary evidence. One theory, proposed by scholar Stephen Powell based on analysis of the Novgorod First Chronicle, suggests that Jebe may have been captured and killed by Kipchaks during the campaign leading up to Kalka River. The chronicle mentions a Mongol voivode being captured on a kurgan and killed, and the Rus chroniclers noted it was someone important, though they weren't sure exactly who. The Kipchaks apparently recognized him and were excited to have captured him. If this was Jebe, and if he died before or during the Kalka campaign, it would explain why Subutai appears to be operating alone afterward, and why the famous 9-day retreat might have been initially a real retreat rather than a planned feint. Another theory says he died of illness during the return journey. Disease killed more medieval soldiers than combat. Given the brutal conditions of the raid, this is entirely plausible. A third possibility is that he survived the raid but fell out of favor or died quietly soon after returning, and his death simply wasn't recorded in detail because of Mongol customs about not discussing commanders' deaths. The most we can say with certainty is that Jebe disappears from the historical record around 1223 or 1224, and Subutai returns as the sole commander carrying the knowledge and experience of the raid. When Subutai reports back to Genghis Khan, he brings more than just stories of victories. He brings a complete intelligence picture of the entire region from Persia to Russia. He's mapped the routes. He knows which passes through the Caucasus are vulnerable and which are death traps. He's fought and studied the military capabilities of the Georgians, the Alans, the Circassians, the Kipchaks, and the Rus. He knows that the Rus' principalities are divided and can't coordinate their defenses effectively. He knows that the Kipchaks can be manipulated. He knows that Georgian heavy cavalry can be defeated by mobile archery. He knows the location of major cities, the productivity of different regions, the trade routes, and their vulnerabilities. This intelligence will prove invaluable when the Mongols return for the real conquest. In 1235, 12 years after the Great Raid, Ogedei Khan, Genghis Khan's successor, decides to launch a full-scale invasion of Europe. The target is the same region that Subutai scouted, the Volga Bulgaria, the Kipchak steppes, and the Rus principalities. Who does Ogedei put in charge of planning the invasion? Subutai. By now, he's in his 50s or 60s, which is ancient by Mongol standards for an active general. But he's the only one who's been there. He's the only one who knows the terrain, the enemies, the tactics that work. The entire European campaign of 1236 to 1242 is based on the intelligence gathered during the Great Raid. When Batu Khan leads the Mongol invasion into Russia, they know exactly where to strike. They bypass the Volga Bulgar's strongest defenses using routes Subutai discovered. They exploit the divisions between Rus' principalities that he identified. They use diplomatic deception to prevent the Rus' princes from unifying, just like they did at Kalka. The conquest of Russia from 1237 to 1240 is brutally efficient. The Mongols destroy every Rus army that opposes them. They sack Kiev, the greatest city of the Rus, in December 1240. They push all the way to the borders of Poland and Hungary. And much of that success comes from the fact that they're not going in blind. They've been there before. They've tested the defenses. They know what works. The Great Raid of 1220 to 1223 wasn't just a sideshow to the main Mongol conquests. It was the reconnaissance that made those conquests possible. Subutai and Jebe's 3-year journey gave the Mongols the knowledge they needed to eventually conquer 1/3 of Eastern Europe. Let's break down what made this raid so significant from a military perspective. This wasn't just about winning battles. It was about demonstrating principles of warfare that were centuries ahead of their time. First, strategic mobility. The Mongols covered 8,000 kilometers over 3 years, fighting major battles along the way, and maintaining unit cohesion the entire time. Most medieval armies couldn't operate more than a few hundred kilometers from their home base. The Mongols ranged across 3 continents, adapting to completely different terrain and enemies, and never lost their effectiveness as a fighting force. Second, intelligence gathering. Every battle, every raid, every negotiation was also a learning experience. Subutai wasn't just winning fights, he was studying his enemies, learning their strengths and weaknesses, mapping territory, identifying future targets. The raid was a military operation, but it was also an intelligence operation on a scale that wouldn't be matched until modern times. Third, psychological warfare. The Mongols understood something that most medieval armies didn't. Terror is a weapon. The goal wasn't just to defeat enemy armies. It was to break enemy morale across entire regions. The raids through Georgia, the massacre of the Alans, the execution of the Rus princes, these were calculated to spread fear. Cities that heard about Mongol brutality were more likely to surrender without a fight. Fourth, adaptability. The Mongols were steppe warriors, comfortable fighting on open plains. But during this raid, they had to adapt to completely different terrain. Mountains in the Caucasus, forests in Russia, fortified cities. They adapted their tactics to each challenge. When cavalry tactics didn't work, they used siege weapons. When direct assault was too costly, they used deception and diplomacy. Fifth, divide and conquer. The Mongols never faced unified opposition. They turned the Kipchaks against the Alans. They exploited divisions between Rus's princes. They used bribes, threats, and promises to split up coalitions that could have stopped them. This wasn't luck. It was deliberate strategy. Sixth, operational independence. Think about what it means to give two generals an army and tell them go explore for 3 years, accomplish your mission, and come back when you're done. The trust required, the flexibility. Most medieval kingdoms couldn't operate like this. Kings wanted direct control over their armies. But the Mongols had created a system where generals could operate independently for years, make strategic decisions on their own, and be trusted to serve the greater goal of the empire. It was organizational innovation as much as military innovation. The Battle of Kalka River happened on May 31st, 1223. The Mongols withdrew east. The Rus principalities had 14 years before the Mongols came back. 14 years to prepare, to learn from their mistakes, to fix the political divisions that made them vulnerable, to build alliances, to study the enemy. They did almost nothing with that time. Oh, there was mourning. The Chronicle of Novgorod describes the grief and lamentation that spread across the Rus lands. So many dead, so many princes and nobles lost, entire families wiped out. Some principalities lost almost their entire military leadership in a single day. There was also fear. The Rus chroniclers didn't understand who these invaders were. They called them Tatars. They described them as coming from the empty desert and as punishment from God for sins. There was genuine terror about these mysterious warriors who could appear and disappear, who killed without mercy and defeated every army they faced. But fear and mourning didn't translate into preparation. The Rus's principalities didn't unify. They didn't reform their military. They didn't establish an intelligence network to watch for the Mongols' return. They didn't study the Mongol tactics and develop counters. They just went back to their old patterns, fighting each other over territory and succession. Why? Several reasons. First, they didn't think the Mongols would come back. This seemed like a raid, not the beginning of a conquest. The Mongols had withdrawn. Maybe they'd been satisfied with their victory. Maybe they'd moved on to other targets. Second, even those who worried about the Mongols couldn't agree on what to do. Unity required compromise, and the princes weren't willing to compromise. Who would lead a unified Rus's army? Which city would be the capital? These questions had no easy answers, so nothing was done. Third, there was a fundamental misunderstanding of what they'd faced. The Rus's princes thought they'd lost because of bad luck or poor coordination, or maybe because God was punishing them. They didn't understand that they had been defeated by a military system that was fundamentally superior. They didn't grasp that the Mongols weren't just another steppe tribe, but a professional military machine. And so when the Mongols returned in 1237, the Rus were no more prepared than they'd been in 1223. Batu Khan's invasion destroyed the Rus principalities one by one. They couldn't coordinate their defense. They couldn't counter Mongol tactics. They couldn't match Mongol mobility. They made all the same mistakes they'd made at Kalka River, just on a larger scale. By 1240, Kievan Rus' as a unified entity ceased to exist. The principalities survived as Mongol vassal states, paying tribute to the Golden Horde for the next 2.5 centuries. The political and cultural development of Russia was fundamentally altered by the Mongol conquest, and it all started with that 3-year reconnaissance raid that nobody took seriously enough. Subutai survived the Great Raid by 25 years. He went on to plan and execute the European invasion of 1236 to 1242. He conquered Poland, Hungary, and would have pushed further west if Ogedei Khan hadn't died and forced the Mongol armies to return east for the succession dispute. By the time he retired, Subutai had conquered more territory than any other general in history. He fought in more battles than any of his contemporaries. He operated on more continents than any medieval commander. And it all started with the lessons learned during those 3 years from 1220 to 1223. He died in 1248, in his early 70s, which is remarkable longevity for a medieval warrior who spent his entire adult life on campaign. The Mongols honored him as one of the greatest generals they ever produced, second only to Genghis Khan himself. And the Great Raid was his masterpiece, the operation that demonstrated everything that made the Mongols so effective: strategic vision, tactical brilliance, psychological warfare, intelligence gathering, adaptability, ruthlessness, all combined in a single 3-year operation that traveled 8,000 kilometers and defeated every enemy it encountered. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. The Great Raid of 1220 to 1223 was one of the most consequential military operations in medieval history, even though most people have never heard of it. It destroyed the military power of Georgia, which had been one of the strongest Christian kingdoms in the region. That allowed the later Mongol conquest of the Caucasus to proceed with minimal resistance. Georgia wouldn't regain its independence until the late 1300s, and even then it would never match its pre-Mongol power. It shattered the Kipchak Confederation, scattering the tribes across Eastern Europe. Many Kipchaks fled to Hungary, where they were absorbed into the Hungarian kingdom. Others ended up in Egypt, where they would form the basis of the Mamluk military elite. The destruction of the Kipchaks changed the demographics and politics of the entire steppe region. It revealed the weakness of the Rus principalities to the Mongols: the divided command, the inability to coordinate, the tactical inflexibility. All of these problems that led to defeat at Kalka River would also lead to defeat in the 1230s and 1240s. The raid was a preview of conquest. It gave the Mongols the intelligence they needed to plan the European invasions. When Batu Khan invaded in 1236, he wasn't going in blind. He had Subutai's reports, maps, and experience to guide him. The conquest of Russia was successful largely because of the reconnaissance done during the raid. It demonstrated to Europe that there was a new power in the east that could defeat any army it faced. The news of Kalka River spread slowly across Europe. By the 1230s, when Mongol scouts started appearing on the borders of Poland and Hungary, some people remembered the warnings. Most didn't. Europe was as unprepared for the Mongol invasion as the Rus had been. The raid also shows us something about the Mongol Empire at its height. This was an organization that could send 20,000 men on a 3-year independent operation, thousands of kilometers from home, and trust them to accomplish their mission. That level of organizational sophistication, that degree of strategic thinking, was unprecedented in the medieval world. Modern militaries study the Great Raid because it demonstrates principles that are still relevant today: deep reconnaissance, independent operations, adaptability to different terrain and enemies, the importance of intelligence gathering, the use of psychological warfare, the value of mobility and surprise. These are all still core principles of military operations 8 centuries later. So here we are at the end of the story. 2 Mongol generals, 20,000 cavalry, 3 years, 8,000 kilometers, and a string of victories that stretched from Persia to Russia. They pursued a dead Shah, destroyed Georgian armies, crossed the Caucasus in winter, broke a steppe coalition, and annihilated the armies of Kievan Rus. Then they went home and reported everything they'd learned to Genghis Khan. It was the greatest reconnaissance mission in medieval history. It was also the prelude to the Mongol conquest of Eastern Europe. The raid wasn't the main event, it was the warm up. The real invasion would come 15 years later, and when it did, the Mongols would know exactly what to do because Subutai had mapped it all out during those 3 years. The princes who died at Kalka River, crushed beneath wooden planks while their killers feasted above them, died for nothing. Their sacrifice taught their people nothing. 14 years later, the Mongols came back and did it all again, only bigger and more thoroughly. The lesson of the Great Raid was clear. You cannot defeat the Mongols by fighting the way everyone else fights. You need to adapt. You need to innovate. You need to be as mobile, as coordinated, as ruthless as they are. Europe never learned that lesson. Not until the Mongols withdrew on their own after Ogedei Khan's death did Europe get a reprieve. And even then, it wasn't because Europe had found a way to defeat them. It was because the Mongols had other concerns. The Great Raid showed what was possible when you combined military excellence with strategic vision. 20,000 men changed the history of a continent. They didn't conquer it, not yet, but they showed how it could be done. And 15 years later, a Mongol army would come back and finish what Subutai and Jebe started. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of history's most incredible military operations, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to Bazaar of YouTube for more fascinating historical content. Drop a comment below and let me know what other forgotten battles and campaigns you'd like me to cover. The medieval world was full of these incredible stories, and I'm here to bring them to you in all their brutal, fascinating detail. Until next time, remember, history isn't just about the big famous battles everyone knows. Sometimes the most important events are the ones that nobody remembers, the reconnaissance raids and intelligence operations that set the stage for everything that followed. The Great Raid of 1220 to 1223 was one of those operations. 20,000 Mongols, 3 years, and the fate of half a continent hanging in the balance. That's the kind of history worth knowing.